Yeah, so I've been thinking about if I should roll an alt. Always liked the Frost Decay, and I thought now that they're getting buffed in the patch, they might finally become playable.
Yeah, I think Frost DK would be a suitable option now. Probably wouldn't have been a good idea this reset, but on the anniversary patch you should maybe try at least.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they've been really, really weak. Like, I feel like these nerfs couldn't have come any.
Buffs.
Yeah. Oh, buffs. Sorry. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they should have really come sooner. I mean, it's crazy like how they can leave Frost DK being so bad for so long.
Yeah, and they keep nerfing. Well, keep nerfing. I think Warrior got nerfed in this patch, didn't they?
It's a bit weird, I guess. Like the I mean, so Arms Warrior is like getting like the nerfs are aimed at nerfing Fury's like AoE burst or something, but the nerfs keep affecting Arms because of the shared like hero talent. So Arms
Okay.
actually gets nerfed, and they don't. The thing is, they don't give Arms any compensation buffs for these things. So Arms keep getting nerfed for no reason, even though no one really plays it.
Just because Fury is getting nerfed for sort of no reason.
Pretty much, yeah. But at least Fury in this patch, it's like neutral change for Fury. It's like slightly less. It's slightly like I think it's like 3 to 5% of a nerf on AoE or something, and then
Oh,
on
okay.
single target, I think it's pretty much neutral. So it's like a small nerf, but not much. But yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like they're giving us even more. They're like leaning into the target cap even more, even though people hate it. So I mean, they're target capping Odin's Fury and Thunderous Roar to 5 as well, which is super weird.
Yeah, I remember when I don't remember exactly when, but was it in Shadowlands they introduced the target caps?
Well, yeah, well, okay, so they introduced it for a lot of other classes, but Fury Warrior had that since at least Legion. So
Okay.
we were kind of ahead of everyone there.
But it was Shadowlands when they did like a sweep across pretty much all melees and just target capped them.
I think so, yeah, I think it was Shadowlands.
Because there's two changes I remember. The target cap, which was a big discussion for a long time and still is. And then I think it was roughly at the same time, but maybe it was an expansion before or after, when they put a cooldown on, or a GCD on every major
Oh my god.
cooldown
Yeah.
that was off GCD earlier. And that was also a big discussion. But I feel like that part, at least, they've compensated for most specs, I think, where the one they kept on the GCD, they provided some feel good or like some instant type of damage, like Ascendance, for example. You do something on what you say, the application of Ascendance, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was BFA.
Okay.
When they did that, and yeah, I mean, there were some. We can spend some time initially here, maybe to just talk about if there were some extremely fucking egregious examples of what they did there. I don't know if you have any favorites that stick out to you as really bad examples of something to be on the global cooldown.
Oh, I can't even remember.
Okay, well, I
For
can.
me, I think I was mostly pissed off that all the Swifty macros, because I think I was playing Hunter at the time, and I think Bestial Breath was either on the cooldown on the GCD already, or it was something else being introduced, but you ended up in a position where you had to press like 3 GCDs to do in your like starting to do damage cooldown Swifty rotation, Swifty Mac rotation part, and that just felt so bad.
Yeah. I mean, these are like rookie examples. Maybe Warrior just had the worst ones or something, but like that. I mean, that's nothing. I mean, of course, every class had got this weird example where your cooldown sequencing became like 5 GCDs, but
Yeah,
I mean, let me remind you, I think you even played Warrior in the first year of BFA.
yeah, I did.
Do you remember that Charge was on the global cooldown? Which meant that on Fetid Devourer, when the knockback came, you had to hold your GCD to be able to charge back into the boss because the knock was so
Oh,
strong
yeah.
that you couldn't just like you could get locked out and not be able to charge within the global.
Yeah, yeah, I remember. Oh, that's so bad. Didn't you also like pre-pop your cooldowns before charging on Pull's Fury?
Yeah, you
And
pop
then you
the
had to like,
recklessness,
yeah, you had to sort of time it decently at least.
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
But
that's a nice sidetrack, but the target cap is still very much a thing, I feel like, and I still don't really agree with the base concept of it when I think it's as easy as you usually say, where if you cap to 5 targets, how can you not, like, you have to do more damage on 5 targets than uncapped spells. Like, it can't really be more convoluted than that.
yeah, I mean, it just doesn't really make any sense. I mean, it's like the only way that the cap makes sense is if that is the case. And if they say like, well, it's not reasonable, you know, because maybe like the people who are like, I don't know, 8 target capped or 5 target capped, maybe it will be too overpowered because that's the majority of the time it's only those target counts or something. Well, it's just the other way around now, right? Where the people who are uncapped are just always overpowered. So if they're going to admit that they can't balance it on that sort of level across the board, like where the different damage patterns don't even out over a dungeon or whatever, or over a raid or whatever, then maybe just give everyone the same target capping rules, you know? Give everyone 8 and then square root scaling, or give everyone whatever they want to be the baseline, right? It's just such a weird thing.
I don't even think I understand the reasoning for the cap. Wouldn't some sort of square root scaling just, like, mathematically, wouldn't that just solve the exact same issue?
I mean, I guess it's just like a class fantasy kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know, like if there are. I mean, there are some small interactions as well. I guess that would be weird. I don't know, like. I mean, so for example, I guess I can, since I play Fury Warrior most, I can give that as like the example. But I'm sure other classes that are target capped have similar things. But it's not just as simple as that, because, for example, right, if I use Whirlwind and use my Whirlwind stacks to cleave something, I can cleave any single target ability. So I can cleave like Hamstring, for example. So if they remove the cap, then it means that I have a 50% uncapped slow or something. So now I can slow every mob just using 1 GCD with 50% with no cooldown, for example. Which might be unintended side effect, but that's something that's, I guess, fine when it's only 5 targets, because if you actually want to slow 15 targets now, you have to mash it 3 times or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then other example, which is more like damage oriented, is like, for example, like there's a talent that you play where if you crit with your Bloodthirst, it puts a dot on the target. But because your cleaved Bloodthirst is maximum hitting 5 targets, you can count that dot only happening on those things. And especially since, you know, the target capping thing doesn't really work with dots, right? You can dot as many targets as you like. So those things kind of throw things off the balance a bit. So I guess like it wouldn't just be as easy as just, you know, turning a switch and it just working. I think they would have to, for each class that has the target cap, they would have to go in and change a lot of different things. So it's probably like, you know, more of an expansion feature if they're going to do something like that. But it would probably be a lot easier in general if they just made everyone work the same way.
Yeah, I think they've committed to this target capping, and it seems like they're doubling down on the warrior even more. I guess it does make sense if you already had some target caps in place. I think Rogue Outlaw at least, or Combat had the same, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, it doesn't seem like they because the weird thing is like the abilities that are being affected now for warrior, at least, they just go from, like, it's not like they're not actually target capped, they're just deal reduced damage after 5.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't, I don't know, it's just weird. It just changes the damage profile slightly, you know. It doesn't actually change, like all the mobs are still getting hit by these abilities that we're talking about now.
Oh, okay.
Which is weird. So they still have the square root scaling thing. But the absolute weirdest thing is that Blizzard doesn't seem to have any idea what they're doing, because, so obviously the Odin's Fury thing, that actually, you know, that actually hurts us a bit. But again, Odin's Fury is also a dot, right? And the dot part doesn't really get affected. Thunderous Roar, majority of the damage comes from the dot. That doesn't get affected because it still hits all the targets. And the weirdest of them all is for arms, the Warbringer thing, which is just the AoE Colossus Smash. you never use that for damage. That's just to buff all the target with Colossus Smash.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. Like, it's just such a weird thing to change. But
And
yeah.
I think that's a good segue into the more tuning discussion, but it really does feel like they're like not even remotely hitting the mark with tunings and numbers right now. Like they're doing this anniversary patch. Hopefully they're looking at it, or I guess the speculation is that they're reworking specs, focusing on design and talent trees and whatnot, hero talents. But the numbers you've seen on this Wowhead post, when they've sort of summarized the gains and losses, the buffs and nerfs in throughput percentages, are just insane. Like notably, Frost DK and Arcane Mage getting substantial buffs. And as of today, before the patch, they're considered or are in practice two of the absolutely best raid specs in the game. Frost DK being meta in the M plus world as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I didn't pull that up now, but I saw earlier today as well the sort of representation graph of all of the DPS specs in the 0.1% title range currently, and then overlaid on top of those, I saw these buffs or nerfs. And Frost DK is so unbelievably overrepresented. Like, they have, I think, like, I wish I pulled up these numbers, but like half of all the DPS or something, well, not half, but like maybe a third of all DPS or something, or closer to a third, maybe a quarter. I don't know. Like, really, really large number for a singular spec is Frost DK of all the DPS that are represented.
Yeah, I have some graph here if you want to compare super quickly.
Yeah.
The population size. It is in the Wowhead post. Comparing the DPS rankings, it's not sorted by population size. But you can see that, for example, Frost DKs have a population size of 23,500. And Fury Warrior has almost the same at 23% or 23,000. But I'm guessing here as well that the growth has been massive for Frost DK. Like, there's no shot that there were this many last year, right?
Right, but now we're talking about the raid, right?
Yeah, the raid.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, you were talking about more general?
No, I was talking about M+. I actually have the graph now.
Okay.
So, yeah, sure. But we can revisit the raid very shortly, but I'll finish the point about M+. So, okay, so right now, or earlier today, whatever, or whatever, in the days leading up to today, at least, when this was posted. So the 0.1% title, meaning just like of all the people in EU and NA, this is for only, that are playing M+, if you look at the classes, or specs rather, that they're playing, the most represented DPS spec with 259 entries is Frost DK. And the second most represented spec is AUG Evoker at 131. So Frost DK is twice as common as the second closest DPS, which is a massive gap, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if we compare it to Fury Warrior, which have been getting 4 nerfs in a row or whatever, there are 19 Fury Warriors as opposed to 259 Frost DK, right? And still, Frost DK are getting this 8.1% single target, 7.6% AoE buff.
Yeah. But what do you think what could be reasonable excuses for letting a patch come out with tuning such as this? Because this is the second 0.05 patch when they've messed up the tuning, with the patch's intent probably not being a tuning pass, right? Like, this is a content patch and a rework patch.
Yeah.
What possible reasons could there be? Because Wowhead and the community easily, like, it's not difficult to find out estimates of the buffs and nerfs. It doesn't take that long, right? And they surely have contact with the community, so they could speak to someone in the warrior community and say, if we were to introduce these changes, which they already surely do to some extent, what effects would you guesstimate that this has? Like, what excuse could there possibly be not to just, while doing this Frost DK rework, not just aura nerf them by at least roughly as much as they're getting indirectly buffed from.
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I think a few things, I guess, here. I think, first of all, yeah, as you alluded to, obviously we had, I guess it's actually it's the 0.5 patch, which we saw also last expansion. Or no, it was at the 1. Wait, when did all come out? Was it the first? No, it was the second tier, right?
Or second tier,
second tier
in between.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 10.1.5, I guess, was the really bad one, right? Where AUG came out and that completely screwed everything, and plus all the reworks. And now we have this similar thing that's, I don't know, like the thing is, this one actually isn't going to upset the meta so much, I think. It's just going to reinforce it, right? Because they're buffing what's already good. Which is a bit weird. But yeah, so if we think about this question, like, why couldn't they figure this out? Or why couldn't they, ask class people or Wowhead or whatever, why couldn't they ask people? I don't know. I heard some things that some of these numbers are more or less, trustworthy, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But again, I have very little insight into the class outside of Warrior. But I know that the guy who writes the Warrior, like Arms and Fury guides, and also who probably contributed the numbers here, he really knows, like, first of all, he really knows, like, these things. He's like a contributor to Simulation Craft and Raid Bots, and like he actually runs all of these numbers and comes up with these things and whatever. And he really knows, and it's been the Warrior guide writer for like 10 years or more or something. Whereas I don't know this, and I should say as well, I know that he's talking to Blizzard like about things, and I know that he even gets like inside info and shit. I hear. Like, yeah, he'll say like, oh yeah, there are buffs coming, there are nerfs coming, whatever, before anything's been posted and stuff. So I know that he has some communication with Blizzard.
Okay.
But I don't know, for example, if the survival hunter guy, I have no idea how good he is at, making sure that the sims or whatever estimate here is correct. And I have no idea if he talks to Blizzard or whatever. So I think that one thing to take with a grain of salt here is probably, first of all, that the numbers could be off, depending on, like, if you know your own class and you go and look at your class writer, you might have a better sense of, like, how, I don't want to say how professional they are, but sort of how, how much into this they are, how much they would actually, know, and how likely it is that they've made a mistake or whatever. And then second of all, also, if they actually have any communication with Blizzard. So there could be, like, I mean, it sounds unlikely, but for example, if we see like Arcane Mage 12% buff on single target, right? That sounds fucking crazy, but there is the chance that the Arcane Mage guide writer, maybe he just made a big mistake because he didn't know how to change the APL correctly in the new patch or something. So I have no idea, but there could be something, or maybe there was a weird new talent that was implemented wrong in Simulation Craft because someone who didn't know Mage put it in, or whatever, any of these random things. So I guess some level of like skepticism is probably warranted for some of them, but I don't know any of these class writers, so I couldn't tell you, but I'll tell you that the Warrior numbers are probably correct. But I don't know about the other ones.
It just seems very strange to me that... So I'm trying to separate it in my mind to where this is a content patch and not a tuning patch, right?
Right.
Because I think that was a DRATNOS explanation and take, which I think is probably a correct one. Because surely they cannot be focused on tuning with what we're seeing. But I still don't understand how they feel like they can afford to further make the imbalances imbalanced. Like, how... I get that they don't really care if Survival Hunter gets 6% better or Outlaw Rogue or something. But I cannot fathom that they potentially leave Arcane Mages and Frost DKs, which are very good, to become even stronger, and something like Boomy or Fire Mage, Ret Paladin, to be worse. Like, I get that they don't really can be bothered with the middle of the pack, but it seems super strange to me that they just leave. Let the worst get worse and the better get better, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And a quick side note on PvP is that like Holy Paladin is by far the best healer in the game, and it's getting so much better. Like not even comparable to the 12% Arcane Mage buff effectively. Which there's been an outrage of as well, you know.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're just missing the mark on in every piece of content, and I just don't understand, to be honest. It seems very sloppy.
It almost seems like the tuning people and the class design people wouldn't be the same, group at all, right? Which I don't think is true.
Well, it shouldn't be true. Not completely disconnected, at least.
Yeah. No. I mean, I can't imagine, right? That would be super weird. But yeah, if some of these very large numbers like Arcane and Frost are true, then they have to go in and aura nerf it instantly. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. But other than that, so I think you made a good comment earlier by saying that this doesn't necessarily change the meta, but might just reinforce it more.
Yeah.
Which I guess would be true for Frosty K and M+, and both Frosty K and Arcane Mage in Raid.
Yeah, and the Rogue, by the way. Rogue is getting buffed here as well. And Rogue is also already, 6%, and Asa Rogue is already tied with Og for the second most represented by far in M+. So.
Okay. But then there's 3 specs. Will be even more if you consider PvP. But will this be okay, I guess, is what I'm asking. Will this actually change anything, or does it actually just reinforce the meta? Would you speculate that guilds will start bringing 4 Arcane Mages or 4 DKs or something?
Okay, so I'll say this first. I think, because for M+, I think there's really only potentially 2 things that can change. So I think I can mention those first, and then we can talk at the raid, because I think there might be more things that can change there.
Yeah.
I think for M+, the big thing is that, because it says that Arcane can get, it says somewhere between 11 and 29% AoE buff, which seems weird, but I think that figure is from the Spellslinger one, though, I guess, when it was overlaid on the graph, so that might not matter. But even if we stick it at 11, maybe that can shoot up a bit on AoE. And then if we look at Elemental Shaman, which is also pretty well represented, they get what wasn't shown as a number, but was just written as significant buff on AoE. So I think for at least for M+, I think the only 2 things that might change, because both Arcane and Elemental were relatively high representation. I mean, they were like outside of the top 5, but just below it, and they were kind of like high representation still. So I think both of those have the chance to climb a bit, but I don't think they're gonna reach like Frost DK, definitely not with the buffs, and not Asa as well. And I guess Og is just there because Og is always OP. But if we look at the raid, which might be more interesting, so yeah, I mean, I guess we'll sort of lean into this a bit, but it was already very common for people to play double Arcane in the raid.
Yeah.
And Arcane, if we look at the damage rankings from the week, right? If we only focus on damage to bosses for a second, because I think that's usually the most important, but depends a bit what you're doing. Arcane is like 3rd, I think, behind like enhancement and assassination. Yeah. So definitely, and they're very, very close with Asa. So I think definitely, like, if they actually get 11% buff, Arcane is going to be the best single target spec in the game for sure, I think. And then that would probably mean that you probably want to bring another one, unless you
maybe it's worth noting here as well that, as we know, enhancement shamans are really strong in the raid, at least, like really strong on boss damage. And for the changes, because they're also getting some changes more to one hero talent than the other, and I have no information other than the estimated changes are just unknown. And maybe they get nerfed, maybe they get buffed, but they could also be they could in theory be buffed, right?
Right, yeah. But I guess it's very hard to speculate when the guide
Yeah.
writer says he doesn't know, so then we probably definitely don't know since we neither of us really play enhancement either.
But I guess
that one,
enhancement is probably the most broken DPS in raid damage-wise, right?
right? Yeah,
Especially if we say that we think damage to bosses are generally most important, or the most important thing. They're probably the best spec in the game.
yeah.
But you don't bring 2, so maybe not.
Yeah, the thing is, the weird thing is, I was pretty sure that they were gonna come out today before the NA servers came up and just say like, oh yeah, here are the tuning paths that we're doing with this patch to make sure that we don't upset the meta or whatever, or whatever they don't intend to do, right? But nothing like that happened from what I've seen. But what should be said, and I think maybe it's a bit unfortunate with the timing of when we usually record our podcast, it's that they have a tendency to post these things while we're talking, and that's happened like several times now. We actually spoke about like different type of nerfs, and then they happened during the podcast, and they were actually
You predicted Queen, the court nerf with 3 orbs or 4 orbs, whatever, and then directly after we recorded, it was live.
Yeah,
or
exactly,
the post-game.
exactly. So there might be that, but I'm pretty sure at this point now. I'm pretty sure NA is already live now, so I think it would have happened, and I see nothing on Wowhead, so I don't think that I don't think there's anything happening, but maybe there's still some aura nerfs or something, or actually maybe not, because it said it said 8-hour maintenance, so yeah, it's maybe not impossible, I guess. I don't know if it's up yet.
It doesn't seem to be up yet.
Okay, well, then there's still a chance, I guess. We'll see.
Hope.
We can hope that there's something to even this out a bit. Right.
So you were saying if these numbers go through and are roughly correct, it would seem very reasonable that you would want even more arcane mages in the raid.
Yeah, I mean,
and you in theory have a spot for it as well, right? Since you're after the buffs, and let's just impose a random like melee tax, right? You wouldn't want to play 15 melees.
Yeah.
So after the raid buffs, I don't think you would have any issue swapping in another arcane mage for whatever, really, like, or a third arcane mage for whatever. I'm not sure if you can fit more frost DKs in.
Not just a third one, I don't think. No.
Yeah, so you probably want to play 2 frost DKs and 3 arcane mages, and I think you would play frost DK over Azarog in general. And melee are being taxed for some reason, so maybe it doesn't change the raid meta too much. Like in instances like this, it's kind of good, I guess, that you have raid buffs on every single class. Like you're not allowed to play 5 mages.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of slots that are locked in, right? I think like you could probably, like, I guess the 2 dev slots that most people play, you could just get rid of both of them technically, right? If they weren't good. There's no reason they are there when you already play a press.
This is some value to not having the identical spec pattern at some point, right? Like, let's say that you have the option to play 5 arcane mages. Maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you'd play 3 arcane mages and have 2 dev or 2 additional frost DKs if you can afford a melee. Like at some point, if it's not too broken, it becomes too much.
Yeah, I mean, it depends a bit on the damage profile as well, right? Because like, even if you think about like for Ansurek or something, right? Even if Fury Warrior did like 100 times more AoE damage than they do now, right? But they still did the same single target.
Yeah. There's
no point to just play a bunch of them, right? Because there's only so much AoE that you need or whatever, right, on the fight.
Honestly, it would probably rather make you want to play less of them.
Yeah, because you would only need the one.
Maybe that happens to enhancement. I have no clue about the damage profile, really. As far as I understand, they're really good on single target. They're kind of RNG, and they have good low target AoE burst.
Yeah.
But maybe that's why the Razor World First only played 1, even though it was so good. Because on most fights, you have some ads or whatever, and maybe the profile just isn't that great that you just need to cram in more boss DPS.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like with both Arcane and Frost, I think, mostly Arcane, is that since Arcane's big strength is single target, right?
Yeah,
You can never say, "Oh no, we have too much single target." That's not a thing in Raid, right? You
and
always
being
want
quite
more.
bursty as well. So like
Yeah,
you have the damage windows, which is great.
yeah. So I think specifically Arcane, you couldn't get too many unless you just didn't have damage, AoE damage or whatever. But that seems to be already very easily solved now.
Yeah,
By this
Frost
point.
DK.
Yeah, Frost DK, Fury Warrior, whatever you already have in the raid, right? So
Yeah.
that part seems fine. I do want to make, before we move on completely from the buffs and nerfs, you alluded to DRATNOS talking a bit about this as well. He made a video. And I wanted to call him out a bit, because usually I like DRATNOS, but I think today I heard one of the worst DRATNOS takes I've heard in a long time, and made me throw up in my mouth a little bit almost.
Okay.
He went through all the different changes, and then he came down to the warrior one with the target cap and the AoE nerf, and then he pulled up the log from his guild and showed the Fury Warrior in his guild who topped their DPS, and that was the rank 1 Fury Warrior log. I mean, there aren't that many logs, but he's the rank, like it's the highest public log at least. And just show like, oh yeah, look at this guy winning the damage, and then he wins by like some margin, right, over everyone else. But it's such a weird, like disingenuous argument, right? Because
And it wasn't ironic or anything.
no,
like
no, it wasn't ironic at all. He was just like, yeah, I think they just need to nerf them, or they're just too OP. Like, so I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't sense any sarcasm, and he kind of defended it. I think even in the comments, what I could see. So, so I was very surprised by that, because I feel like this has been one of the weirdest nerfs I've seen in a long time. I understand that it looks bad on the meters or whatever, but that's more because of the way that the fight works, and especially now that you see that people no longer even play 2 Fury Warriors on the fight on Ansurek, right?
Yeah, we actively opted out of 2 Fury Warriors.
Yeah.
Because there's no need.
Yes, and we did the same. And I think even though a lot of the early kills played 2, that was because you needed that AoE damage for this. And the only reason you really needed that burst type of AoE as well, right, is because you play the ads completely differently from how you do on Heroic. On Heroic, you could do it with much slower AoE, because you push the ads, like, or you run away with whatever the tank mechanic is that spawns the ads, and you slow them, and you can ring whatever, you can do whatever you want, right? And you have a long time to kill them. But on Mythic, what you do, presumably because you need the damage, right? You put the ads basically on top of the boss almost, and you just put a ring of peace, and then you just kill them while you're cleaving from the boss, pretty much. And because of that, you have a very tiny window where you need to kill the ads. And because of that specific requirement of having ads that you want to kill in a small window of time, then Fury Warrior was good, right? And I mean, especially now looking at like a damage meter, of course the Fury Warrior is going to top the damage meter when he's the only person popping all his cooldowns into all the sets of the ads, you know? It's just such a... Yeah. I don't know. I that was a rare DRATNOS L take, I feel like. I don't know. I don't like it. I'm very tired of these Fury nerfs. Please stop. Please, no more. No more now.
Yeah, it's a bit fun as well, because it's a bit funny, because I think I thought Fury was busted at the beginning of the season, but by knowing you and by knowing a warrior in our guild, made me understand that, yeah, they are the best at this situation we're describing, but it doesn't really make them super broken, right?
Yeah, you're not really... That doesn't really translate into a lot of scenarios in the game, right? It's a very specific thing.
And they just got you've got a nerf after nerf after nerf. And not only, as you've alluded to, that like ARMS has been taking some nerfs indirectly.
Yep.
I know that the PvP community has been really down bad, because Fury Warrior looked like decent, as far as I understood, like not broken, like good 80 or something, and they've just gotten beaten down and beaten down and beaten down, and you just can't play it anymore, pretty much. I think Fury is like almost playable. ARMS is not playable at all. You only want to play some like Colossus one-shot thing, Demolish, I've heard the terms.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, But
Yeah, it's like that active ability capstone thing from the Colossus tree. Yeah.
Sorry, I wanna sidetrack on PvP a bit more than I planned to, because it's so funny when you watch these patch note videos. I don't usually watch a lot of them, like the DRATNOS breakdowns, because honestly I just don't care. I look up what affects me and then I'm done pretty much. But you always hear DRATNOS, like you can hear them in your head. Oh, this might be these some PvP changes. I don't really know. Let's just move on, right?
Yeah.
But when you listen to the PvP community have these patch note breakdowns, which is something I consume more. Not that I'm more interested in the content, but that it's I have a harder time keeping track of it, I guess, since WoW had reports PvE things way more, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, you can see them go over the patch notes and like, what are they even doing? Or is Warrior good in PvE or something? Like, and it's the same thing, but it's just like WoW is made for PvE, right? The
Yeah.
main patches and everything is made for PvE, and the confusion on the PvP side is so big.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like I feel like they mostly tune the game around the raid, and then there's a
Yeah.
little bit where they care about M plus, but M plus still has to live with a lot of the things that come from raid. But
Yeah.
PvP, it has to live with whatever scrap comes left after
Yeah.
M plus as well, right? So
And then they like sloppily sometimes does some PvP only tuning, which is sort of only salt on the wound to some extent because they've already made the step of separating PvP and PvE tuning, right?
Yeah.
But they're still missing the mark by miles,
yeah, it's
And
crazy.
like I can almost like by keeping track of PvE, by keeping track of raiding specifically, you can almost predict what's going to happen in PvP. It's not always a one-to-one because often something is really good in one content that's not great in the other. But like a more clever person than me would realize that warriors are not going to be good in PvP this season. They're just getting nerf after nerf after nerf, and it's completely PvE directed.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is very similar to what I've been saying for a long time, which is that specifically, I guess mostly true for Fury, but like Fury War is just never going to be good in M plus because of the way they work, they would then be too good in raid, so they're never going to be good.
They were almost good in PvP for once, but that was
short-lived.
Short-lived. At least they're the best warrior spec for a minute, but warrior are down bad.
Yeah.
Fun fact of the day, though, Frost DK is not good in PvP by any means. I'm guessing, very thin ice here, but I'm guessing it's due to breath not being a viable concept in PvP, or probably not a viable concept.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, and I don't know how true that is in PvP, but I guess like in PvE the things don't run away from you, and DK maybe doesn't have the greatest way of catching up to people.
Yeah, I just thought it was a fun. I don't know why when you brought up DRATNOS, I could just sort of see a highlight reel in my head of PvPers being confused about patch notes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't honestly.
Because you're living in a separate universe completely, right? Like they have no awareness of the PvE scene, just like you have no awareness of the PvP scene.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just a random Fury warrior logging in at the start of the day, being like A tier at best, maybe B tier to be real. And you're like, fuck yeah, let's go. I'm smashing some Sula Shuffle. And then like, more nerfs?
Yeah, that is actually crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they obviously have these like three pillars of the game, right? They have like raiding, M plus, and PvP. I feel like they just have to find a better way of sort of, making sure that each of them can be balanced at the same time, right? I don't know. I don't know. It's weird the way it works now. Really weird. I mean, they already have this in place a little bit now. I mean, for PvP, it's for a long time things just work completely differently in some cases, right? And you have PvP talents and stuff as well to like even things out. But for PvE, like M plus and raiding, they don't really have that separation, but they kind of do, right? Because, for example, right, some things just work differently, right? I think Disc Priest has some weird modifier in a party or something for atonement healing. Augmentation has some weird, or got removed now, or improved, whatever, some changed nerf, whatever. I don't fucking know. They have some of these things already, right? That already work differently in raid or party. So they definitely could make more of those things, but maybe it's a bigger stretch to just say like, oh yeah, Thunderous Roar is not target capped in a 5-man group. Maybe that's just too weird. I don't know, but
I was gonna say it's not a good excuse, but I get the base like feely crafty reason why, because if you read on Revival and it says increased healing in a 5-man group, that sort of makes sense, that sentence. But as you say, Thunderous Roar does double the damage in a 5-man group.
yeah,
Doesn't really make
but
sense. But I don't think
honestly,
there's anything stopping them from having just M plus. Like, it doesn't even have to be non-raid. It just has to be M plus specific. Like, they could do the exact same thing as in PvP, and it wouldn't be any more confusing than the PvP thing is, which is not like, once you know. It's not that difficult.
And they could even, if they really want the sanctity of PvE or whatever you want to call it, like it's to remain where everything works the same ish, they could just keep it to only having aura differences, right? That would be enough to make it work, right? They could just make it like, oh well, this ability has a 20% penalty in raid combat, or the vice versa, right? That would be fine.
It's still gonna be a difference now, right, with the raid buff. Like, you're gonna be significantly stronger in raid than in keys.
Yeah.
So there's already fake separation there. Like, it will feel different to hit the boss, and in raid and in keys, you will you will look at the details meter and be like, what?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah.
Did you have anything else on the tuning that we missed?
No, I don't think so. I'll just hope that there actually is some, tuning path that comes along with the patch that we just haven't, been informed of yet. But yeah,
well, to their credit, they've done some really late night announcements, as we alluded to previously. So the hope is,
it kind of has to happen before NA servers come up today, right? Because otherwise it's really weird if people start doing keys and raid and stuff, right? That would be weird.
Yeah, if they're not doing it before the servers are up, they would have to wait at least to reset, I guess. But maybe maybe it isn't perfect, but maybe that's the best or a decent option if they're doing a massive tuning pass on next reset or reset after.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still only, 20 guilds in the world or some shit that have killed.
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, it just seems so. I mean, imagine now, like, if Arcane becomes super busted, Frost becomes super busted, and just for sake of argument, let's say that also enhancement, their unknown thing, actually makes them super busted as well, right? If they let that be for a week, and people kill the boss now, I mean,
to nerf the boss.
Yeah, but that's not fun for it. I mean, it's just I really hope that they do something here. The more I think about it, the more worried I become about this stuff, actually.
Yeah, same. They actually they sort of have to nerf it within an hour or leave it for a long while. And not both. The latter one is problematic. I guess there is some unprecedented scenario where they leave it like it is now, and then they actually buff every other spec in the game. Like, do the theoretical good play of buffing everything instead of nerfing some,
Yeah, but then you're
there's no
nerfing
way.
the raid, and so that's the indirect nerf to the raid, right? So yeah, I don't know. That's also not good. I don't want nerfs, right? I don't want
I think we
nerfs.
need to swap topic before we get sad.
Yeah, I'm already sad. But yeah, I'll just say this, that if you look at the Wowhead data here, damage to bosses 95th percentile, as Wowhead has posted from Warcraft logs here. Fury Warrior is helplessly, like so far in last place. There, like, within every other DPS pick in the game, there isn't as large of a difference as there is between Frost DK, which is second last place, to Warrior, which is in the very last place. So I think that being happy for more nerfs for Warrior, I think, is a bit toxic, actually. And even if you look at like all damage to all bosses, they're like 5th from the bottom as well. So that'll be my last complaint for this week about Warrior being nerfed. But I'm sure if there are more nerfs, I'll complain again.
Yeah. talking about nerfs, I guess now is quite a decent time to recap the effects of the press nerfs, don't you think?
Yes, that might.
Because now it's been 2 weeks, right?
Yes, there has been 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't remember what I said 2 weeks ago. I think and hope I said reasonable nerf. Seems like they left Ansurek in a weird position before it got nerfed, which they fixed a week later. But looking back at it now, it's very reasonable, still very reasonable that Press got nerfed, or Flame Shaper got nerfed. I feel like it is still the best healer in the game, but Flame Shaper isn't so broken. Well, it is actually kind of so broken. But it isn't as broken on every single fight, you know? Like, Queen Ansurek is a really good fight for preservation, I feel like.
Yeah.
So that could make Blizzard nerf them even more, and I think Press can afford to get nerfed even more. And I think Kuvesa and Rashanan are the only other notable ones where you're great, like healing pattern-wise. And to recap a bit from last week, we both killed Silken Court now.
Yes.
And I actually didn't play Flame Shaper on Silken Court and play the other hero talent. The vast majority of Preservation still plays Flame Shaper, and I think it's sort of an effect of that's what you know, right? That's what you've learned.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's the easier hero talent as well. So it does make sense. But I really enjoyed it. So all in all, I think it was good that you got nerfed. I'm still best on the last fight, which is fine. You don't need to double stack press on the last fight anymore, which is great. You definitely had to before the nerf, or I think you would have actually had to before the nerf on the fight. And I think we're in a good state. I wish more people played Chrono Warden on Silken Court. I think it's the better spec for the fight. If I can be a bit cocky here, I think I can safely say if we public logged, I think more people would play Chrono Warden on the fight. Like it actually slaps.
Because of your log, or because of many other people, or what do you?
Because of my log,
Okay.
and I'm guessing there are other private logging guilds. Because you're in a situation where I'm guessing only sweaty people would swap, right? And probably only sweaty people would swap and play a arguably more difficult new hero talent and perform better.
Right.
So I think Press is in an even better state than people realize, because Chrono Warden is super competitive. It's just a bit finicky.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that'll be. I think if it is actually better or whatever, then it's gonna have adoption, but it might take more time for people than. I think at the level that we play, obviously people just like swap randomly over. People just randomly swap, right? Immediately if something is better or whatever. So that's yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I don't have any other more, like, obviously there's better preservation evokers than me out in the world, right? And I think I still have, if our log would be public, I would have the rank 2 log on my own cooked Chrono Warden timers and stats and whatever. And I am very confident there's more to fetch, like there's more throughput to be found. And I think it's a bit of a sleeper. It's not better on Queen Ansurek, but on half of the fights, I think it's for sure better.
Yeah, and yeah. And it's also like healer, it can take a little bit longer, right? Because it's not as obvious beforehand. Like for DPS, it's often pretty obvious beforehand. Like this is going to be better now because you can run all the sims and stuff. But healing, it's like, well, all the fights are different. It's not necessarily easy to know for sure, and so as more people public log, as more people kill the boss, whatever, we're actually going to see probably more adoption if it actually is, better. So yeah, will be nice, a nice thing to like sort of follow up on as the raid progresses more.
Yeah, it definitely lags behind. I don't know how many healers agree with me, but I feel very strongly or confidently that there's so much missing from healing, theory crafting, simming, and whatever. People are just copying what they're seeing on workout logs, which are some innovators and people copying the Raise the Wolf first, right? And playing Preservation Evoker as a main for the first time, it becomes super clear that people know way less about this class just because it's new. Maybe because there's some wonky or a lot of wonky interactions. But I can confidently say that you cannot from logs or from the community or class discords at all be sure that people have found the optimal play.
Yeah.
Like it's so much unexplored territory. It's surprising.
Yeah. Yeah, but well, that makes it the more interesting, I guess, when we actually get to see it play out. People can cook a bit. Nice, but yeah, I guess I should also issue a slight correction. You said that we both killed Silken Court, and of course, both our guilds did.
Oh yeah.
But the
bench lord,
the bench lord was still benched.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this: I'm back, bitches. Because I've at least so far I've been playing Queen. So yeah, that's fun. Back in the game, missing two potentially fun bosses, but of course the last boss is the most important. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I think the only thing I want to recap about this reset wasn't. Oh yeah, you didn't play it. Sorry, it wasn't even an intentional flame. Court was surprisingly nerfed, or it was surprisingly easy after the nerf. When we first read the patch, which was right after our last podcast, I think we both in Discord chat was like, yeah, makes sense. Doesn't seem huge. Seems like a reasonable nerf. Might have been, I don't know. But it was so much easier. Like it was insanely much easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess so. To recap the nerf, basically, you have more time to pick up the balls spawned by the other group, and also you now die at 4 rather than 3, so you can pick up 3 instead of 2 per person. And the thing is that on its own maybe doesn't sound so big, but like there's so many like chained things that happen from that, right? Because like since you have so much more leeway in dealing with that mechanic, it becomes a lot easier to dodge other mechanics or do other things or whatever that would have maybe been the thing that killed you or something, right? So it just it becomes a pretty big nerf for sure.
Yeah, like we on our last progress night before the nerf to the boss, we had the best pull of around 38%, and you had lower 30%, I think.
I think 30 pretty much, yeah.
But we were roughly at the same point in the fight. And if I look back at the Wednesday, like the re-clear day when the nerfs have hit, we managed to get 10 pulls in on Mythic Court. And the fourth pull was a new best pull. It was 12% on the boss.
Yeah.
And then pull 9 and 7 was also 14%. And then we go into, like we just jumped an entire day of progress with the nerfs or something, because you just don't die. Like you miss an orb, it's fine. And double, triple stacking is way more easier to deal with, right? Since you can take more orbs. And I guess it becomes even more, it has an even bigger effect, because maybe the issue of not soaking orbs was that some people in your guild weren't as good at soaking orbs as others. And that just becomes even like an amplified effect of the people that are actually soaking the orbs, which must be at least half of your raid and even more, are just gonna vacuum them, right? Everyone take one more, and there's no orbs left for the 2 worst players in the guild or something.
Yeah, they don't need to soak almost, right? So
yeah,
yeah,
it's just such a significant difference, and I was super surprised. I did not at all expect it to be that much easier.
Yeah. Obviously hard for me to comment since I didn't actually play the fight, but yeah, it seemed a lot more chill, if you will, to deal with the orbs.
Yeah, and then we just went in on the Thursday and killed it in a couple of pulls, and it was basically just. I don't think it will take us any more pulls if you just pull it today either. You just sort of need to get everyone alive to the last overlap, right? With the dispels and the charge. And let's say you have like a 30% or 50% chance to get there almost. You have a 50% chance of solving the last overlap and you're done. Like it's. I saw some meme tweet, but I honestly don't think this is a big pull number boss now. Like, I think you kill this in 50 pulls or something. If you start today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. I still saw some people on Twitter even this week saying like this boss is so brutal, and people said like 100 pulls in, we still wipe almost always within 1 minute of the fight. But these are obviously worse skills, you know. But I saw a lot of people complain still about this fight, so I don't think it is that straightforward, probably. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for our guilds it would cut the pulls in half. Like I would be surprised if we didn't kill it in 50 pulls.
You mean from scratch at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how much. It is a very scripted fight, which must be way easier for more planned guilds, I guess. But these changes gave so much leeway.
Yeah. I mean, I think looking at it, your guild actually had a way better but from the point where you came to a low percent, you killed it in much fewer pulls. Or like you actually sort of, you actually got the kill without having that many good pulls, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas my guild had a lot of good pulls or close pulls, whatever. We had like 7%, 9%, 5% before it died, which basically means that we failed the dispel that many times on the end. But we actually ended up on pretty similar pull count. So we had 184 and you had 176 in total. Because we also killed it on Sunday for us because that was our second raid, because we don't do the 4 days that you do. So yeah, all in all pretty similar. And now it's down to the races for Queen, I guess.
What pull count did we have?
You had 176 and my guild had 184.
Are you seeing this on Radio?
Warcraft logs.
Oh, okay. That is probably better.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so pretty early in the week, for us it was early in the week. It was on our second raid day we started pulling Queen Ansurek. So we've had 2.5 raid nights on it, and I guess you guys have had 1.5 raid night on Ansurek at this point.
1.25.
Okay.
I think.
But we're basically 1 day ahead, I guess.
Yeah.
And I would say that the first half day for us was just chain wiping very, very early in P1. The second day, so the first half a day, which was on Thursday, we just chain wiped in P1 and figured some stuff out, but we had issues with everything from the webs to the breaking routes and everything, I guess, pretty much. And then on our first full day, I think we started seeing the intermission a bit, but wasn't really close to getting through the intermission clean. I don't even think we got through intermission with more than enough people that you would need with bloodlust to break it, And on our third day, and I don't know why I confused myself with the half day, but I'm just gonna say the third day or the second and the half day, we started getting to the intermission quite consistently, and we by the end started breaking the shield without lust, since we just lusted to always get through if we got there, or give ourselves the best chance to get through to see P2, and started progressing P2. So we can currently, on our best pull, I think we've gotten through the first platform, but we get 1 grip too much, 1 rest too much. And we haven't really progressed the second platform. We lose too many people in before P2 itself, or just in before the second platform.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a summary of where we're at.
Yeah,
And I have no clue where you guys are at.
yeah, so again, for context, you guys did 118 pulls on Queen.
Okay.
We did 50
Okay.
so far. And we have broken the shield once, I think, with like 17 people left or something like that. And then, weirdly enough, we died before we got before we got knocked up the first time from that point on, though. But yeah, we basically
by the portal or by the kicks?
Honestly, I don't know. I was one of the last people die. I don't know what people died to, actually. I don't know if people stood in the balls or if we missed a kick or what. I don't know what we died to, actually. I'm not sure.
Okay. But then it sounds like you're on the exact same progression path we were. Because when we we had raided a day and a half, we had gotten through the shield a couple of times, but very sloppily so, and not really not really having a chance to do P2 progression.
Yeah.
I think our log here shows that we got to P2 3 times. And that was by pull 56. Or 46. So.
Yeah.
For the day. So a bit ahead. I guess we must have wiped a bit more in on our first day or something like that. But pretty much the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks similar. Will be interesting to see how that tracks throughout the rest of progress, because I assume there's going to be a little bit left to play for there. I guess if we go back to your initial prediction, you said that you thought that Queen would die on October 23rd.
Yeah.
Do you still think that this is the case? That would be tomorrow.
No, my initial prediction was 23rd. That's obviously incorrect. And then, not on the podcast, but a week or two or something after that prediction, I predicted the 27th to another person. Because I had to move it 2 days, because I thought, yeah, 23rd is a bit too soon.
Yeah.
And now I think I have to move it again, where I don't think it's impossible for us to kill it on the 28th. But if I were a betting man, I'd say 30th, 31st. I would be surprised if it didn't die the 31st, so in a week and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, we're
with
gonna
current tuning and whatever. I'm not really considering the arcane mage buffs and whatnot. I don't think that would significantly cut the pull count for our guilds from where we're at, because from what I can see, we pretty much just have the luxury of living a bit easier, and we're probably not gonna have to min-max the DPS in order to kill the boss. So I'm guessing we are looking at a kill when we kill the last acolytes, but don't have to pick up their thingy. If you're familiar with the point. And I think the next breakpoint would be not even having to kill the acolytes. And even that I don't think would reduce the pull count that much, you know?
Yeah, no, I think the last set of whatever thing they're called that they're dropping, I think that's like the very hectic wipe point, right? That we could that we're gonna skip most likely.
And I think we're over that just by our gear level. So I think
and the buff.
It's reasonable, and the buff as well, yeah. And it looks like the anniversary patch. But I don't think any more DPS will save us any more time.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing it's not going to be a super painful progression. I don't know what the total pull count would be. Do you have any?
I mean, I just know that Liquid and Echo had like 400-ish, I think.
Yeah, and Laget, the best Swedish guild, had 303.
Yeah.
So I might just say, with better circumstances, maybe we can kill it in 300 as well.
Yeah.
That looks on track. So yeah, to go back to your question, yeah, my prediction is incorrect. I have to move the prediction by a week exactly, which is more than it sounds because it's 4 raid days for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna try to even predict for us, because during the podcast, actually, our guildmaster posted in our like tactics channel or whatever, and he said that we actually want to try to move a raid or maybe two even to earlier dates because we have some attendance problems in November. So we want to try to kill the boss before that, so we don't have to, get really screwed over.
You're gonna fake your world rank, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't clicked on the straw poll and clicked on seen the alternatives or whatever. But depending on exactly what happens there, if it turns out that we're actually gonna raid 4 days now, maybe for the next week or two, I don't know. Or if other way around, if it turns out that we actually don't manage to move anything and we actually have some people away in November and we get screwed and we kill it in a month, I don't know.
Okay, but let's change the prediction format, or whatever you would call it. How many raid days do you think you need on the boss until it dies? Because with my prediction, I am saying, I guess I have to pick a date, and I don't want to be boring and pick the safe date, so I'm gonna pick the realistic, optimistic date, and I'm gonna say we need the entire next reset and then 1 day, because on the 30th, that's when the buff comes in as well. And you get the vault and whatever. So I think we will kill it in 5 raid nights.
Okay. Well, now I guess. I mean, obviously it's my first tier with this guild, but just looking at both of our guilds 1 tier back, like looking at Firak, my guild killed Firak in just over half the pulls that your guild did. So the question is now, can we be super clutch and just kill it in like 4 raids from now, or three raids from now? I don't know. Can we be like really quick now?
I can help you out and say that I don't think you're on the path of 3 more raids.
No, I don't think so either.
I think 4 is optimistic, but that's as much as I would stretch it as our pull count -1. Because I would guess if you would look at the first 2 raid nights on Firak, there would be a difference there, right?
Probably, exactly. It'd probably be a very big difference. I think that at least I don't know how big difference is for your guild, but I think my guild is quite different from the guild that killed Firak. So a lot of things that have changed.
But if it's 4 and you move 1 raid to this, to the reset coming now, that would mean that you could kill it on the 29th or before the next set of ICC buff comes in. And I honestly don't think it's unreasonable. I think gear alleviates a lot of the issues with this fight. Because I think P2 is mainly just a numbers, like a number check. You need to have enough healing and enough damage to pace out. Like you need the damage to only do 1 set of grips. And you need the healing to survive that set, right? With the spells and everything.
Right.
So I think P2 can be quite easy. So that would pretty much leave you to, if you're going to kill it in 4 nights, you would need 1 more night to get to P2 consistently. You would need another night to get to P3 consistently. And then you would have 2 nights for the last phase in this very optimistic schedule. But that doesn't really sound too unreasonable.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I actually pulled up the straw poll now, and there will be no, like, the earliest possible extra raid we can move into is the 29th. So there's definitely nothing this week.
That is this week. Or this.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it is the last. Yeah, actually, it is the last day of this week. So that, yeah.
The bad thing about that is that it's the day before the ICC buff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think it's marked as the priority is the 31st. Is like the biggest prior raid that they want to play, which it would be after.
Yeah, I think that's a way better option as well. Because I think it's like, I think it's very realistic. Are you gonna commit to 4 day? A 4-day prediction?
I mean, I think that's very spicy. Nah, I mean, or 4 days.
But then
I gotta say 5 though. I think that's still pretty spicy, honestly. But I think 5. Okay. Now, whatever. It's more fun to go crazy. I'll go crazy. I'll say 4. We're gonna make like a miraculous run here. We're gonna do 4.
It's always hard to estimate how much damage alleviates. It is a lot. Like, it does make a big difference. And health particularly.
Yeah.
I rarely feel like the throughput numbers. Like, I do not want to make an argument for that healing gear does not matter, because it really does, especially when you consider the skill level difference towards the Raise the World First. It's a bit of a sidetrack, but I feel like healing is a more vague and more difficult role than generic DPS in Raid. And giving your healers a better circumstance would make more sense than people give it credit. Because in the Raise the World First guilds, you really do gear the healers. And in our guilds, you really don't gear the healers, right? You just let the gear be. But the part of that is also that the raid health goes up a lot, which I think makes a big, big difference, even bigger than healing more, right? Just living hits is way more effective than throughputing hits, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a really poorly constructed sentence, but...
Yeah, but what can you do?
Yeah, but I think Queen Ansurek will be pull count-wise alleviated a lot by gear. I would guess, especially from hearing what Max and Echo said about the fight, I think their high pull count was a lot due to them having to actually cram out the damage.
Yeah, that's not really going to be a thing for us, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe we should move over to something more maybe technical, maybe hard to follow. We'll see. But before with the podcast here, we actually pulled up a lot of composition comparisons, I guess you could call it. Where we pulled up at least what we play currently. It could change for any of our guilds. But we pulled up the comps that we're playing, and we pulled up the comps that Liquid and Echo ended up killing Queen with as well. And we thought we would just run through the comparison a bit to see like how close we are, because I think in the first episode you said we're now in guilds where we have more, at least we have the chance, I think, to play more similar or very, very similar or even exactly the same comp as the Race to World First. So it would be interesting to look back now and just see if that actually came through, or how close we actually came.
Yeah, and I think more specifically in my guild than yours as well, because I think a big priority in my guild is to mimic the Race the World First. I guess Race the World First is slightly incorrect. It is to mimic the guilds we're copying to kill the boss, which is mostly Race the World First, but yeah.
Right. And I think, I don't remember if we spoke about this on or off podcast before, but I know that at least we've spoken about this before. I think that my guild doesn't really have as much of an aspiration to copy the comp as yours probably does. Which you could also see in the fact that we ran one fewer set of splits than you guys as well, right? We only run 2 splits. We don't run 3. So we have fewer characters as well. But we'll notice that when we go through the differences. So should we just go over like the differences and just see? So if we initially just look at the tanks, maybe that's the simplest one, pretty quick to go through. Then if we start with Liquid and Echo, they both played a Brewmaster. And then Liquid played Guardian and Echo played Prot Paladin.
Yeah.
And here, I think it's fair to say that both of them played the Brewmaster because they didn't play any other monk. So they had no choice. They had to play a monk somewhere. We'll get back to that later, but I know at least that Liquid or Max said that they would have played Trill, who is Windwalker Monk, if he didn't have to go and basically quit the race to play AWC. So that's maybe not too crazy of a swap, but let's stick with the tanks for a second, right? So if we move over to our guilds, we also both play Guardian Druid. So my guild, your guild, and Liquid all play the Guardian Druid. Seems pretty standard. And then we have Blood DK for us, and you guys started with Prot Paladin, but I think you're going to play Blood DK now, right?
Yeah. So next reset, as far as I'm aware, we're playing DK instead of Paladin because our our Guardian Paladin choice did not end up working out great due to some tank mobility issues, which I guess will be in hindsight even more of a reason to straight up copy one of the guilds, because Guardian Paladin wasn't any of Echo or Liquid's comps. The one with the Paladin was with the Brewmaster, and the Brewmaster has a lot of mobility, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever the tank issue was for P2.
Right.
So we both have one difference from one of the comps.
Yeah. But we will end up being the same as each other, at least.
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
So
identical to each other, one different from Liquid.
Right. And then if we move over to healing, all the 4 of the guilds here now have the same 3 healers. So each one has Press, Holy Paladin, Holy Priest. That's true for all of us. My guild, your guild, Liquid Echo. And then here, I think the only diff is that both your guild and my guild is playing Resto Shaman as the last healer, whereas Liquid and Echo played second Press Evoker. And this, I think, to be fair, is because of the press nerfs.
Not for us. I think I would advocate strongly for playing 2 press if we had access to 2 press comfortably. I think the press nerfs makes the Resto Shaman a really good choice. Probably, arguably the best choice after a second press, but I would say that a second. Oh, sorry, I messed with the mic. A second press would be the best option.
Okay. I thought. Okay, then my point was wrong. I thought that you guys would have played press, but maybe you wouldn't then.
Well, yeah. Long story short, we've had a hard time accessing double press with our healing roster, but we've been very fortunate that our 5th healer accidentally is playing Dev/AUG. So we've been able to utilize a second press for some of the fights, but sacrificing a Dev slot.
Right.
But this was never an option. This was never the plan for the last boss.
Okay. Yeah, and I think for us, this was always the plan. These are the 4 main healers we've had the whole tier. We don't have a second press at hand either, really. So I think, and again, I think especially with the nerfs, I don't think this doesn't change the fight that much. I think.
No.
So I think this is also no big diff. But again, here we have the same as each other, but we have one diff to both Liquid and Echo here.
Yeah.
And then maybe if we move on to the more interesting part, which is a DPS setup.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, there's a bunch of things that are common for all of our setups, which makes sense because of buffs or whatever. So we'll just go through them really quickly. The first is Rogue. The only thing here is that my guild, Liquid and Echo all played a sub-rogue, but your guild is playing an as a rogue. I don't know if you have any insight into why that is.
Asa is good. I don't know. No insight.
Okay. But given that we are, not very knowledgeable about rogue, we'll just say we all play one rogue, at least.
Yeah.
And again, you're forced to because they have a buff. Or debuff, rather, I guess. And then, again, all the 4 of our guilds plays 1 Enhancement Shaman. All of the 4 guilds play 1 Fury Warrior. For all of this, I should say at least 1 at least. We're just running through the things that are common at this point. Then all of the guilds also play at least 1 Dev Evoker, 1 BM Hunter, 1 Arcane Mage, 1 Frost DK, 1 Havoc Demon Hunter, and 1 Destro Warlock. So that's a pretty big number of specs, but that basically just fills out all the different raid buffs, right?
Yes.
With the exception here of, I guess, for our guilds, we didn't technically need the Shaman thing, because we already had Resto Shaman, and technically none of us really needed the Dev there, because we already had that buff. But everything else, Rogue, Warrior, Mage, DK, Warlock, Demon Hunter, all of those are raid buffs that you couldn't get rid of. So that makes sense. Or I guess DK isn't a deep raid buff, but whatever. Okay, and then we come to the more interesting part, which is the sort of differences here. So first up, then Echo, Liquid, and your guild all play second Dev Evoker.
Yes.
But my guild does not. It's a little bit hard to say exactly what we play in place of that, I guess.
I think you could say that you're playing a second enhancement instead of the dev.
Yeah. Or I guess you could say the boomy. I don't really know. It's a bit
Well,
unclear.
Echo played a boomy, so it's
Yeah, Echo play. It's a bit. This is also a bit weird, I guess, here because Echo played a boomy because they didn't play a Guardian tanks. They had to play a boomy.
yeah.
But we already have the buff, but we still play a boomy. I don't know why that is. I don't think boomy is that bad, but I think also our boomy, or our main boomy at least, is Lorgok, who used to play in Echo, and I think he's, if not the best, one of the best players in our guild. So probably also makes sense to play him, right? So I'm not really sure, but obviously we're the only ones here who have more than one druid now. We actually double down on the druid without technically needing to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the dev choice here. The weird thing is we have a second dev actually, but he's on the bench. I'm not sure if anything was up with him, but I know that he's been benched even on farm for a few weeks now. I don't have any insight into why that is. I'm not sure. Maybe like he couldn't. I don't know if he had similar to me, like where he had some big like attendance thing where he couldn't show up for some rage or something, or if it was performance based. I don't actually. I have no idea actually why, but he hasn't played for a while. So I guess that's why we don't play second dev. And then yeah, for the rest of you guys, I mean, it makes sense. Dev is really good, right? I mean, they do a lot of damage basically. And actually, they get a weird buff now tomorrow to shield damage as well, I think.
Yeah.
Which will help with breaking the shield, but again, that's not a big concern anyway, I guess.
Yeah. I think Evoker also just have good stackable utility like Zephyr and Spiral and Rescue, which are all used in this fight, and you definitely don't have too many of them by having 3 Evokers. I think it's worth mentioning that Evoker is a very stackable spec, disregarding tuning. Evoker is a very stackable class, not regarding tuning.
Yeah, that's fair. And if we move one step forward again, then we have very similar setup where your guild, Liquid, and Echo all played a second Arcane Mage, and my guild does not. And again, we actually have an Arcane Mage on the bench. I don't know the reason for this. He played on court, so he's available at least. I don't know the reasoning there. But yeah, we chose to not do that. And again, it's hard to like one-to-one map who it is that is being stepped in here.
I guess arguably the Ret Paladin for you, even though the other guilds are. Well, I guess not Ret. I guess it would have to be Shadow.
Yeah.
But I think it's getting a bit confusing at this point.
Okay, let's do it this way instead.
If I'm allowed to take over for a sec, I think we can basically summarize that all of both my and Very's guild with Liquid and Echo have the majority of DPS in common. And that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 of this exact same DPS class specs. And then in total, Very's guild have 5 different specs to a specific comp, that being directly copying Liquid or Echo. But if we're being a bit flexible here and looking at, for example, Echo played a boomy, but Echo didn't. Oh fuck! Now I confused myself. Yeah, this is a bit hard to talk about.
Okay, so I think maybe the easier way to do it is to do like one-to-one comparisons here. So if we just try to see what differences there are within all of these different things, right? So if we compare just for a second, just Liquid and Echo only, because that's like the smallest diff, I think, or not the smallest, but one of the smaller here, I guess. So the end diff between Liquid and Echo on the DPS side is really only Boomy versus Frosty here, right? That's the only difference.
Yeah.
So they only have the one diff, And the reason why they have that is because Echo did not play Guardian Druid. And because they didn't play Guardian Druid, they were forced to play Boomy here. And then they chose to drop the Frost Decay, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the only difference between Echo and Liquid. If we then start comparing to your guild instead, I think the best comparison here is to leave out Echo for a second, because I think that they, as we just saw, they have the same comp basically as Liquid. They just had to force in a Boomy because of things.
Yeah.
So if we just leave them for a second, just compare your guild to Liquid. The only difference really is the two last slots for you guys, right? So it's you have Windwalker and Shadow Priest, whereas they have Ret Paladin and Fury Warrior.
Yeah.
And again here, first of all, as I said before, Liquid Max said that they would have played a Windwalker had Trill been available. So that's probably not a crazy swap.
That's probably for the Ret as well, since they already have a Holy Paladin, and Fury was probably needed for them to kill all the ads, as we mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. And that was exactly because that's basically both of the diffs, right? They would have probably played the Windwalker instead of the Ret, and the second Fury Warrior is just because with the gear level they have, they needed 2 Fury Warriors to be able to kill those small ads in the last phase.
Yeah.
So that's really the only difference. So you guys actually play a very similar comp. And I guess we should
we played a Shadow Priest instead of a second Fury Warrior.
Yeah. Which
and
they got buffed, right? In between this.
They got buffed, and they seem to be very good in the fight, so it's a very intentional swap for us. The only relevant insight in our Windwalker and Shadow Priest play, I guess, as you said, the Windwalker was probably a really good option. Liquid would have played it in if they had the option to, I guess. And our Shadow Priest is a reroll from a Warlock, so we were basically in a position where we had to play a second Warlock or a Shadow Priest.
Right.
Because we are currently 21 available people raiding. So the only person we have on the bench is a Havoc Demon Hunter that's available. But I think we're quite happy with how close to the bottom we landed.
Yeah, given 21 people, you get really close.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you can continue the difference with your guild now too. I guess you should compare to Echo because of the Boomy.
But not really, because the Boomy isn't forced for us. We have a Guardian, right? So it's not really the same. So I think it's more fair. And Liquid, to be fair, they also won the race, right? So.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think. Yeah, so the weird thing, I guess, for us is that we actually don't have this shortage of people that you have. And as I mentioned, we could have slotted both a Dev and an Arcane. We have those people on the bench. At least Arcane is available. I don't know about the Dev. But yeah, I mean, I think so basically the big diff here is that we actually diff on 5, as we said. So where they play Dev, Arcane, Frost, Ret, Fury, we have Windwalker, Enhancement, Boomy, Ret, Shadow. So yeah, I guess the Ret actually is not diffing. Actually, that's the same. But all the other 4. So it's Windwalker, Enhancement, Boomy, Shadow for Dev, Arcane, Frost, Fury. And I think same as for you guys, really. The Shadow versus Fury swap, I think, makes sense, right? If you don't need the second Fury to kill the ads, then Shadow Priest is probably just a good class to slot in on the fight, right?
Yeah, but you guys also naturally play the Shadow Priest throughout the tier, right?
Yeah, our raid leader is Shadow Priest, so
yeah,
that was definitely that was always happening, I think. And then, yeah, as I said, Boomy, I think it's because our Boomy player is just very good.
But I think that's interesting as well, because Shadow today, I think, is the correct play, since Shadow has gotten buffed since the Raise the Wall first, and seems to be very strong on the fight. And with the input from Max, Windwalker seems to be a correct choice as well. So I think we actually might, on the DPS side, hit the perfect setup. I don't think we're unhappy in any way with any of the specs we have in. And I think you guys are at most a second enhancement and a second druid being a Boomy off, right? an acceptable.
Yeah,
Or
something
a very,
like that. And as I said, like we could have at least two of these we could have put in, right? So we could have
Yeah.
removed a lot of the differences. So and
it
we
seems intentional at this point.
yeah, we intentionally didn't do it, right? So so yeah, I mean, definitely it's clear that your guild is closer to the, like, I don't want to call it meta comp, but kill comp, at least you could say.
But somehow, what I find more interesting is that even though we are quite close to Liquid and Echo, like we're in total 3 to 4 specs off, 2 of which being tank and healer. So we're even closer to your comp than their comp.
Yeah, but that's more because of tank and healer, right? Or are you thinking only about DPS now?
Oh yeah, I guess it's a tank and healer that pivots it to being closer. Yeah.
Yeah, because
true.
you get one extra diff per healer and one per tank, right? Whereas on the DPS it's not. Because on DPS you don't share anything with us. You share. Oh yeah, Windwalker and Shadow Priest. I guess you have 3 diff on the DPS with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's similarly, yeah. Yeah, I don't actually know. I haven't looked at like the comps now, or I mean I've looked at like heals and stuff, but I haven't really looked or tallied out the comp of like Fat Shark, yes, and Loget and all of these other guilds now that kill it.
But I mean, we might actually be spot on with Loget. I'm not sure. I think that might have been where we got our tank combo from, but I'm not sure.
That you're changing away from now, or?
Oh no, we were on almost. We were closer to Loget than theirs. They're playing a second warrior instead of a second dev, and they were playing Brewmaster instead of our Blood DK / Prot Paladin, and they're playing a Ret instead of something. I can't see that spontaneously.
Right.
Instead of the Restore Shaman, I guess indirectly because they're playing 2 press.
Right, yeah.
But they're probably closer to what would have been good at this point in the patch.
Yeah.
But if you look back, not on actual data, but just on our old guild, because I'm in a guild where we're trying to play what's best with some consideration of what we're able to play well. And your guild seems to be somewhere in between there. You seem to have some one tricks that are good at their spec, and you're committed to playing like a Resto Shaman from start and not even trying to get the second press. But if we would have compared this to what our old guild, our old common Swedish guild would have done, we would have been like 10 off or something. Maybe not 10,
not
but
10.
we wouldn't be.
You can't even be 10 off, right? With the buffs and stuff. But...
yeah, I guess.
I mean, to be fair, like you can't be like our comp versus Liquid's comp. We could have only been at most 1 more off from them, right? On the DPS side, because everything else was a raid buff, except for the Red Paladin, which we share with them. But everything else that we share with them is because of the forced raid buff. So we couldn't really have been more off than we are now.
Yeah, I guess. Or than you are now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, of course.
Well, I mean, we could have had played a Mistweaver.
On like the healer and tank side, yeah, we could have been even weirder. But like on the DPS side, if you constrain it to the tanks and healers we have now, we couldn't have been more off, except if we would have played something else instead of our Ret Paladin now, I guess. Because all the things that we have in common with them, we could not have swapped out, right? They were
not. It depends on how. I get what you mean, and you're correct. But all the specs that can play multiple roles could have been switched around quite aggressively.
Yeah, I guess and I guess technically we don't need. I guess you don't need a Frost DK, right? They don't really have a raid buff. You don't really grip anything, right?
Yeah. Like we didn't have a DPS DK in our old guild, right? So let's assume we could have played 0 DPS DKs, and then we probably would have played a Vengeance tank, and for fun, let's just say we played a Prot Warrior.
Well, that's a bit of a stretch, but...
And then we could have been with a Disc Priest, because we always had this one healer who always insisted to play Disc, even though Holy was better.
That was you, man, okay?
Yeah. Uh, I can think of some ways to get the number even bigger, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if you're
Maybe not 10, but
if you're shifting around the tanks and the healers, yeah, you could get it bigger. But on the DPS side, you couldn't really do much more. I think. Well, constrained to the tanks and healers we have now.
yeah, I was gonna say elemental, but Rest of Shaman is already not what you would play or what they played.
Yeah.
But all in all, we land on your guilds with 7 differences, or 5 to 7 depending on how you count, and we have 3.5 to 4 depending on how you count.
Yeah.
And I feel like we are playing Fotum, like in my heart, you know, like we've actively tried to play the comp we want to play. And although comparing to Race of World First is the correct comparison, this is not exactly what we're trying to achieve, right? We're trying to achieve what seems to be the best comp right now.
Yeah.
Which is a small deviation from the Race of World First comp due to tuning changes.
Yeah.
And some minor consideration to what we have available. I think our biggest awkwardness, honestly, was that we couldn't in practice make the Fotum healing comp. Due to what people are maining, what options we had, we did not have a comfortable way of getting double press.
Yeah, same here. How do you feel about introducing a new segment in the podcast? Because I think I have something pretty cool I could do here.
Okay, what?
So this is the Competitive Casuals podcast breaking news.
Okay.
And why? I think 10 minutes ago now, there was the post we've been waiting for.
Oh, did they nerf stuff?
Yes, they did. I can just read to you now what Blizzard said here. As we developed patch 11.0.5, we made some changes for Arcane Mage and Frost Decay that were intended mostly to be quality of life improvements. After further analysis and feedback, it's clear that without additional adjustments, these 2 specs would gain substantial buffs. And so then, then they're making some
So it
changes.
is just Frost and Arcane then?
And Blood.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't care about Blood.
Yeah. And one, I guess, we don't have to, there's a lot of changes. We don't have to really go through them, but basically I think they're trying to just adjust this number down to 0, right? I think they nerfed a bunch of different random things on both of these specs, Frost Mage and Arcane Mage and Frost Decay. But one final important note here is that at the bottom of their post, they're also saying, we're also planning tuning for other specs to be implemented with weekly maintenance next week, October 29th, and we'll have more specific to share on that in a few days.
Oh, preservation buffs. Let's go.
I don't think so.
But Fury nerfs?
Fury Warrior is just too good. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see about those changes. But I guess that'll probably be like one of those Friday posts, that they make sometimes. But yeah, how do you like the new segment, the breaking news segment? I don't have like a jingle or anything to play for this, but
I think it's good. It is usually the time on Tuesday evening when we're talking about current patch note related stuff. They invalidate us.
Exactly.
During it, but maybe you can just have some sort of notification on Wowhead and refresh frantically throughout the podcast to get the breaking news segment.
Exactly, you'll hear my mouse go in the background, click, 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 and just like that.
Yeah, well, I guess I don't have much to say other than that seemed like it was necessary. I feel like we both got a bit scared there by the end when we started to realize the implications of not nerfing them, especially for the raid, right?
Yeah.
So looks good. I have no clue what the numbers are. I guess you don't have either. I don't really think it matters if they're 2% better or 2% worse. It's if they manage to make them the changes roughly a net 0, I think that's great.
Yeah, but it scares me a little bit that Blizzard buffed Arcane Mage by 12% and DK by 8%, whatever. And they thought that they just made some quality of life adjustments. They did, like, their like sense of, you know, tuning or sense of whatever you want. I don't even know what you want to call it, but their sense of how much these changes would impact things is so off. Like, it's so crazy off that it gives me very little faith in, you know, their tuning in general. Like, how could they not realize that the changes they make to Arcane here would make like a huge buff, right? Because 12% is a massive buff.
Well,
and you rarely...
You were correct earlier.
Sorry?
When you said, maybe you were correct when you speculated. I think you were joking a bit, but maybe their designers and tuners are more separated than one would think.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's how it goes. Like, people redesign, and then smarter people look at the... I guess not smarter people, since tuning are all over the place, but some people are looking at the tuning.
Yeah.
And adjusting the knobs.
I don't know. I think, actually, I don't know if I'm correct here, but I think, like, I don't think they have, like, this is like the Death Knight team. I think it's just like they have a bunch of class designers and they work on a bunch of different classes and stuff. So I think they just don't have a great insight into all the different things. I think they maybe just didn't know. They just didn't.
Maybe they should have a weekly meeting just looking at the Warcraft logs with some more details.
Yeah, that would probably be good.
Could
probably invite some people from the class communities to talk to, you know, to get some better ideas.
WoW tuning weekly stand-up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Final,
but that's good.
Yeah, that's good. Final note I wanted to mention again about Queen Ansurek is that we both said that Shadow Priest seems good or whatever, but there are actually 0 public logs containing Shadow Priest. But again, there aren't that many public logs, so we don't have to maybe read into that too much.
Yeah, I have only heard second hand that they're supposed to be really good, and I don't really have any more insight on that, but people seem convinced that they're a great spec after the buffs for the fight.
Yeah.
If I just look at Laget, which is the Swedish guild, which I know I've killed the boss recently, I can see the Shadow Priest on the details on the kill video on like 8th place. So it doesn't look like they're topping or doing anything insane, but from what I've understood, it has something to do with the timings. But they're a 2-minute class as far as I know, so I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know. I guess we'll see once more logs come in, you know, from other guilds and from our guilds and stuff. See how good Shadow actually is on the fight.
But yeah, that's about it with Ansurek comps, right?
I think so, yeah.
I also had, I just wanted to mention and ask you about this protest thing in the tool. I haven't been playing keys, but I know you have. Have you? So it was a Reddit post of someone just printing the LFG tool where people are posting keys with the title like +10 protest. And I am unsure if it's people actually gonna complete these keys or if they're just filling up the tool in some weird attempt of protesting the meta is my guess. Do you have any more insight in this meme?
No. Well, so if I'm not mistaken, I think it was mostly +12 protest, not plus.
Okay.
+10. Yeah, it was mostly. And no, I haven't seen it in the game, but I've just seen it on, you know, on Reddit. But if I understood correctly, I think it's about people saying that it's too hard to get invited to 12s or whatever. People want tuning or something. I'm not really sure what it is that they're protesting for. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's weird to say. Like, I still think that it's stupid that there's such a big jump between 11 and 12, even after the change. But 12s are more than more than fine now. I mean, when I did my weeklies this week, I did finish all the 12. So I've timed, literally my scoreboard is just all 12s timed, you know? And that was just, I'm just pugging randomly, right? The one thing I think that maybe is a bit disconnected to a lot of the people here is obviously that I play Prot Warrior now in keys, or I have been at least, which is like the most meta tank, right? So probably a bit easier for me, given that, first of all, I get invited to pretty much everything I want because I'm the most meta tank. And also, I guess, you know, as always, the tank is the by far the most important person in the group, right? So I'm much more in control of what happens than some random DPS who joins a key as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen.
This is the first time you're actually part of the meta, right? Since at least the title has gotten introduced.
Yeah, I mean, so Prot Warrior was meta for the first like few weeks of Dragonflight.
Oh yeah.
But that was also during like raid progress and stuff, and I didn't really play that much. So yeah, yeah, pretty much you could say, yeah. So that feels good to get really insta invites everywhere.
But that also, then we can also not trust your take on how easy it would be to get invited, since you're not trying to get invited as Fury, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean the thing is like if Prot is gonna be meta like this, I'm just gonna play Prot, right? It's too, unless I play with a full team and someone else wants to tank, then there's no way, right? There's no way I want to play DPS. It's just too hard, or too annoying. Because like it becomes even worse because if Prot is good, it makes Fury less good as well because you already have the buff and the shared utility, whatever, right? So,
yeah.
So that's
I guess it's potentially really good for you, since Photom spec and tank role, so it's the most demanded role as well.
Yeah.
And it will be an upside if you're actually good at the game. But if you're not good at the game, and I think in reality, if you're not well prepared for all the different dungeons and routes and whatever, it might be to your detriment. Like maybe now is the season you realize you're not good enough to get the title. You've just been carried by being one of the irrelevant DPS slots.
Exactly, yeah.
Have you thought about this?
Yeah, definitely. No, but actually, I think I don't know. It's a bit hard to gauge because pretty much every season, or actually every season so far since they introduced the title, right? I've gotten it by the end, but I've always been very, very far behind initially because I don't push any keys, if that makes sense, during raid progress. I just focus on the raid basically and just run my weeklies or whatever. And so I've always just fought from behind, and it usually takes quite a while to catch up because it's almost like this elo hell kind of thing. You get stuck with way worse players, and it's super annoying to grind up the score. And, you know, if you're just pugging, that is. If you're with pre-made, it doesn't matter. But if you're pugging, that's kind of what ends up happening. But this season, it's not like that at all. And now, having just done my weekly keys, as I mentioned, I'm like 2 key. I think if I had done like 2 13 keys in addition to the 12 keys that I've done, I would have been on the cutoff already, which is pretty crazy. And I'm not sure if that is because I could so easily do this, but I've seen like some, common friend of ours who plays Ret Paladin. He's also on similar score, and he's also just been pugging as Ret, I think. So I don't think that it's so much because of, me playing this. I think it's more to do with the fact that there's no affixes that are changing, so you can push any week. There's only one set of the keys on the scoreboard because of not tyrannical and fortified. So I think it's just like a lot easier to just get the thing. Like, I think more than anything, skill will prevail so much. It will help you so much less to just do just doing an unbelievably large amount of keys that will help you so much less now. And if you just put up a couple of good keys, you'll have the title. That'll be it. It'll be so easy to catch up. So I think like if you want to start playing keys, like you realistically you could just in a week, if you just had a few friends to pug with, you could just grab the title in a week. Later in the season.
Yeah, maybe I'll hit you up the lost reset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
maybe you can carry me for once.
Yeah, totally. We'll try that out.
Yeah, but honestly, it is a good feeling to be ahead of the curve. when it comes to the title. I think I've only really pugged one season and 1.5, I guess. Like the first title season for me, which was like the second one or something, we played a lot and we pugged a lot.
Yeah.
And other than that, I've been playing in at least pseudo teams. And then you're very easily ahead of the curve as long as you play. I do remember, I think it was Shadowlands Season 4. I don't think I was behind the title for a second that season. Because we played from patch start because it was super hype with the introduction of the old dungeons and stuff. And I was just... That felt so good to be ahead of the title the entire season. And then also seeing you being behind feels even better.
Yeah, I had such a hard time that season because not really, but I started out, even though there was no raid progress because of season 4, I was away on vacation for like the first 2 weeks of the season or something. So I came back with no gear and no score and no nothing. So I had like a really slow start. Yeah. So then it had to ramp up that season, which was like annoying because that would have been my one season to start, to not have to wait for the raid and everything, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a bit unfortunate.
Yeah, that was a fun season. But just because it was like fresh with the new old dungeon system and everything, it was so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. I had one more thing I wanted to sort of tie the stack together. Maybe that's not something you say in English, but I wanted to come back to full circle, I guess. I wanted a full circle moment here. Do you remember in the start we spoke about the GCD changes that they introduced in BFA?
Yeah.
We moved on a little bit quickly. I wanted to actually...
Oh.
I wanted to mention a last thing about that. First of all, if for any reason Blizzard is listening, please remove demo shout again. I think that's super annoying, but that's not that important. But I wanted to call out what I think was the worst of them all. Because obviously Charge was bad, but there was one that was way worse, and I cannot believe that got past testing. And that was that Ignore Pain was on the global cooldown. Which, if anyone is playing Fury Warrior, Prot Warrior, you basically bind it to your scroll wheel and you just spam it the whole time while you're doing your normal rotation. And so in the first like few weeks of BFA, you basically just clicked Ignore Pain every second GCD all the time. Which is just crazy. You just went clap, Ignore Pain, clap, Ignore Pain, clap, Ignore Pain. And that was it. It was like the weirdest thing ever. I don't know. So I'm happy that they reverted that pretty quickly, at least.
Well, I guess they could have changed the spell itself to like consume all your rage or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, but that's very annoying because you also have other things you can spend rage on. But yeah, and it just doesn't feel good, you know, because it doesn't do anything. It just gives you like a half-ish absorb thing. So
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I was trying to remember, but I was playing so many. At that time, I wasn't really like a... I feel like I've been a healer main for a while now, and I've been playing Priest most of the time, but before my healer arc, so to say, I just played different things every season, and it's very muddled. So, like, I don't think I've been connected enough to a spec at that time to be hung up. Like, I would have just swapped spec, you know?
Yeah.
If I didn't like that, I would just not play Prot Warrior, but that's not an option for you, or Warrior.
Yeah.
But I do remember it was such a big thing. And I do remember having to go in and look over all my Swifty macros. And Swifty macro might sound like a meme, but it is still common, but it was so common then, right? You just had binds that pooled your cooldowns together. And it could be like, it didn't have to be like major cooldowns. This is an even bigger tie back, or wrap up. But some specs, you know, before GCDs was dependent on haste as well, you tended to macro up even more stuff, or even sequence like the start GCD of your cooldown, because since haste didn't affect your GCD, you had a specific set of GCDs in your cooldown. So I remember I was playing a lot of sub rogue in VOD, And then you had that situation where, like, if you pressed your cooldown and then your first GCD, and you didn't do that within, like, at the exact same time, you would lose a GCD in your cooldown window.
Yeah.
And that must have been true for a lot of specs, even though it might have mattered less, you know?
Yeah, and I mean that was also an era where there were fewer procs, I think, because that's also one of the things that can break your flow from doing that, right? Is if something procs and that changes something for you.
Yeah. So it just felt like such a big change at the time because everyone was macroing everything. Like everyone had a cooldown button, you know, like this is what I press when I go big damn. And that's, you just had to look over that and remove that macro and like maybe bind something you hadn't bound for a while because there was no need to have a second bind for it, you know?
Yeah, you actually have that macro now for Fury Warrior, which I understand that also makes it sound like Fury Warrior is so stupid and that's why we deserve the nerf or whatever. But in the build that you play on AoE in the raid, and if you play Slayer in M+, the build you play, you macro together Recklessness, Avatar, Trinket, and Thunderous Roar. All of those 4 things. And they share exactly that 90-second cooldown.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't even have to track any of them. You just pull one of them on your bar. You put like Thunderous Roar on your bar. You don't have to track Wreck. You don't have to track Avatar. You don't have to track a Trinket. Because you know, when you press Thunderous Roar, all of those other things also happen.
Yeah.
So that is truly a Swifty macro. Like 4 things in one. You just wham bam and then
But I
do
mean,
damage.
fuck what Blizzard says. That's fun. Like, it feels good. That
Yeah.
button is good to press.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
I know a classic one for me, because I've been healing for a while now, and you don't really Swifty macro healing stuff in general. Maybe Resu Shamans could do that with... Oh, it doesn't matter, but it's not the same thing, right? I'm not looking for one point to line every throughput CD I have.
Yeah.
And also throughput CDs are on GCD, because it's a... Yeah. But racials, I know for a long time, I removed my racial bind for offensive racials. And let's say I played Troll with a 3-minute Berserk, and I played a 2-minute class. I would obviously still track the cooldown of my racial, but then I just pressed my Swifty macro if I wanted to use the racial outside of the normal window because it's desynced, you know?
Yeah.
And I know I've used that in the past as well when you've had situations like this where you have off GCD stuff you just want to bake together, but maybe Avatar is a 45 second, not a 90 second, and you just need to press it off cooldown. There's still no reason to have a different button for it in this situation, right? You could just press your Swifty macro again, it's the only available cooldown.
Yeah.
So I'm good that they at least... There I think they made a good compromise with the off GCD thing, because it did remove some things, or they reverted some things back, so they weren't on the GCD, but they did commit to some of the cooldowns, but it just made it make more sense that it was a GCD by having the button do something.
Yeah, I think there are, we don't have to get into the whole thing, but yeah, I think there are definitely still some things that are still super awkward, but I think in general they fixed most of the things and it's not too bad.
Yeah, but I think it's rare of Blizzard to sort of compromise and go back on what they've done.
Yeah.
So
But I mean, that
we should
must
take
have been
the
one of the
W.
most hated changes of all time, right?
Yeah, still.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember the remnants of the garrisons for a long time. Like they really wanted to press in that table, you know, that you had in the center of your garrison. They really wanted to use that tech.
Oh,
Even though they removed the garrison, they're like, yeah, we're gonna make this fucking table work. We're gonna put it outside your boat in BFA, and we're gonna, yeah.
yeah, they even had it in Shadowlands as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy that doesn't exist anymore. The mission table, yeah. Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. Did you have anything else?
Yeah. So how do you end a podcast?